Let me read to you a passage from the 13th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, verses 36 to 43. It's the Gospel for Tuesday of the 17th week in Ordinary Time. St. Matthew writes, Jesus dismissed the crowds and went into the house. His disciples approached him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field." He said in reply, "He who sows good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed, the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one. And the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. Just as weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all who cause others to sin and all evildoers. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears ought to hear." That's from Matthew chapter 13, verses 36 to 43. What does this suggest to us? Well, it speaks of the ultimate future. Let's imagine a couple marry in a farming district in a remote but somewhat idyllic valley. They have 4 children who grow up on the farm, going to the elementary school, with one of them, say, receiving secondary education as well. Their schooling passes, and they each arrive at adulthood, close to one another, but each of them being different in character and temperament from the other. They marry one after the other, and their paths diverge, and great differences in the paths of each become manifest. They raise their children, and how different their children are, how different their spouses. One especially significant difference is the degree of religious faith which comes to characterize each. And so it is that each reaches old age and passes on. The one has become profoundly religious and committed absolutely to God. The next, less so, but with a living faith nevertheless. Another lives his religious faith but poorly, and the fourth has lost his religious faith altogether. They are buried in cemeteries far apart, and scarcely known among the wider circles of their relatives. But there are a few in that wider circle who find themselves reflecting on the lives of each of the 4 brothers and sisters. The course of their lives could never have been predicted. The future as it unfolded turned out to be, on that small scale, remarkable and surprising, especially in the variety of religious faith which in the final event became apparent. But this is a feature of so much of human life. It's unpredictable. The details of the future cannot be foreseen. As each person looks back on life, how much of it would he have predicted? We are talking here of individual lives, but how much more is this the case of the world? In the 18th century, who would have predicted the terrible French Revolution and the rise of Bonaparte and the continental wars that marked his regime? It set the stage for a century of change. And in the 19th century, for that matter, who would have predicted the terrible carnage of 2 world wars in the following century, and other wars besides, let alone the terrible sufferings perpetrated by communist, fascist and Nazi regimes? I mention these instances drawn from individual and public life to set forth the essentially unpredictable character of the future of man and the world. Absolutely speaking, only God knows the future. It is in His hands, and for that reason our Lord repeatedly warns us to stay awake and to be ready, for we do not know either the day or the hour when He will come. But we do know the ultimate future, and so we can live accordingly. God has revealed that the most important thing about the future is his judgment on us, the judgment of God. There will be a divine judgment on each and all of us, each of us individually at our death, and all of us together at the very end of time. We have been told the future, and so we can get ready for it. Christ tells us in our parable that I've just read earlier that there will be a judgment. And in his parable, our Lord means those who are neglectful of God and of duty to take great notice of this fact. As we heard, just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all who cause others to sin and all evildoers. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears ought to hear. Notice that while the parable speaks of both the wheat and the weeds, it's primarily about the weeds. In his explanation, our Lord speaks mainly of the fate of the weeds. Just as at harvest time the weeds are gathered up and burned, so it will be for all those who cause others to sin and all evildoers. Their lot will be the fiery furnace, while the righteous will shine like the sun in the Father's kingdom. The whole world is heading for an awesome finale, and every little thing in daily life counts with the eventual upshot. Every thought, word or deed that is the result of personal decision will be taking us in the direction of either heaven or hell. Life is not just a personal adventure, something we create for ourselves with no more ultimate consequences for ourselves. Life is not something to be wasted in mere adventures, the upshot of arbitrary whims. If I build my successful business in no small measure on the basis of various forms of injustice, then I'm heading towards the ultimate tragedy. If I'm building my business on the basis of what Christ commands, I'm heading towards the ultimate success. As St. Paul writes in one of his letters, "Eye has not seen nor ear heard all that God has in mind for those who love him." Let us resolve to love God then, and make every day count.